thinking about judgment and fear and the power of both and the ways that we let judgment and fear take over instead of letting them be what they are, which are just feelings that we're having. There is something specific about the way that we feel it in religion that is worth unpacking as women who are like on a mission to make a difference in the world. So what would it look like for you to access your faith, your spirituality, your connection to the divine if you had absolutely no fear of judgment, no kind of worry that you were gonna get called out, called names, called in? That's more like what happens in the religious communities I've been part of. And I just wonder, like, what would we be saying? How would we be showing up? What would be true for us and what would be real if we weren't letting fear and letting judgment be like the main drivers? And I think for so many of us, we don't even always know that that is still really present in our lives. So like I was talking to a client the other day who was like, I don't even go to church anymore, or like I don't even talk to these people anymore, but I still hear their voice in my head when I'm like having sex with my boyfriend, or I'm like going to a place I know they wouldn't approve of, or I'm reading a book on like tarot or witchcraft or whatever, and I can like remember it, I hear it. And it comes from that same place, right? Like that same worry that like, oh, I'm not being good. I'm not being like the good girl right now. Or like somebody would look at this and not approve. And the somebody might surprise you when you like really dig into it and think like, well, who is that whose voice I'm worried about? Is it like an old pastor? Is it an old boyfriend from youth group? Is it like the girls from Bible study, or a focus on the family, like spokesperson, like what, who knows? But like sometimes it can be really helpful to be like, wait a minute, like whose voice am I hearing? And do I really want that to be the voice that decides like what I do next? And it doesn't mean that everything stops mattering, or that you don't need or want different people to understand like what is true for you. Like you can still share what's on your heart. You can still share like, this is the way that I'm feeling the most connected. This is the way that my faith is feeling like the most alive. And I don't need you to tell me that it's okay, or I don't need you to approve of me in order for me to be safe. And there's like a rewiring of our own nervous system that has to go along with that. Because what that fear and that fear of judgment taps into is like our coding in our bodies that if our community doesn't approve of us, we really will get kicked out and die. Because like for thousands of years that was true, and humans are social creatures and we need our family, and we learn so early on that we need our parents in particular and anyone else who's keeping us alive to think that we're cute and worth feeding and tending to. And so we develop these approval seeking mechanisms in part because we need them, and it's helpful to think through them so that we can break them apart. So first of all, like recognizing that like that fear and that judgment totally makes sense. It doesn't come from nowhere. We're not like weak or particularly crazy or particularly flawed or fallen because we are wanting that. We've literally been trained for that to be the exact thing that we want, both in our social life, within religious communities, as women and girls, and it's in our DNA, like it's in our body. And we're also not bound to it. And if we're really going to forge the kind of relationship that we each want to have with the divine, where we know that we are just infused, every fiber of our being, every cell, just so loved and adored by the entire universe, and that everything that we want wants us back, it requires rewriting a lot of those scripts, or at least it did for me. And so recognizing that the approval desire is real, it's totally fair. It's often withheld intentionally within communities like this. And part two is that I can recognize that it's real and I can move without it. And I can go find spaces where I am approved of. But even more importantly than that, I can move the locus of approval and of recognition and of unconditional love from outside of me to within me. And that's what the connection to God is all about anyway, but it also keeps us protected. And so that's really what I am all about now, and helping women in particular, because I think we were so conditioned not to have it. So it's important and radical when we create it for ourselves, but helping us create that internal ecology of belonging, approval, and thriving, in particular in this orientation around religion, so that then we're free to move around.